Saudi Arabia is making some huge steps into promoting football these days, after Qatar hosted the FIFA 2022 World Cup, which turned out to be a huge success. Teams from all over the world played there, and as a result, many fans wanted to see their favourite teams win. Later, football players like Cristiano Ronaldo and Karim Benzema moved to the Saudi Pro League. There's a much darker side to football in Saudi Arabia. But before we talk about that, we'll go over why these athletes chose to switch. The Saudi Pro League is one of the richest leagues in the world because of the financial backing of the Public Investment Fund, which is also Saudi Arabia's sovereign wealth fund, and recently has been heavily investing in football and increasing the salaries of their players. Ronaldo signed a 2.5-year contract with Al Nassr in December 2022 for more than $200 million. Following Ronaldo, Benzema signed a 3-year contract with Al Ittihad, and recently Kylian Mbappe was offered a contract to move to Al Hilal in the Saudi Pro League, but the French striker declined. Maybe he knew something wasn't right and decided to refuse right away. This means now the Saudi Pro League can compete with the top leagues in Europe when it comes to finances. This is really attractive to the players because now they can earn a significant amount of money. But is there something that they don't know of yet and should be careful of? What about the tax breaks? Other than these irresistible contracts, players move to the Pro League because of the tax breaks. As a law, Saudi Arabia has no personal income tax, so foreign players in the Saudi Pro League are not required to pay any income tax. Do they qualify for Champions League? The AFC Champions League of Asia is equivalent to the UEFA Champions League in Europe, and it is a highly competitive and prestigious event. The Saudi Pro League is now one of those 12 leagues that qualify for the AFC Champions League. With the option to compete in the tournament, the players get the chance to compete against the best teams in Asia. Despite all this, the world of football in Saudi Arabia has a much darker side. Mohammed bin Salman has taken matters into his own hands and has abused his power by sidelining and even arresting potential rivals within the royal family and government for more political control. This type of leadership, where power is usually only in the hands of a single leader without any kind of checks or consequences for their actions, is called an autocracy. Prince Salman recently bought Newcastle United for around $415 million as a sign that Saudi Arabia wants to invest in something other than oil, such as sport, and particularly football, to generate more revenue. Prince Salman sees the world of sport and entertainment as a way to lift his nation to become a global player. However, the question is that his only motive, or is there another scary motive behind all this investment? Other than buying a football club, with his wealth, he owns a $400 million mega yacht called Serene that he bought from a Russian millionaire and is one of his prized possessions. While the Saudi prince enjoys his yacht, he's responsible for imposing a blockade on Yemen, and as a result, many are starving there since there is no trade or supplies going to the people through Saudi Arabia. While some people have praised his efforts in trying to modernize Saudi Arabia by bringing in football as an example, there are still alarming concerns about human rights issues, crackdowns on dissent, and the lack of political freedoms in the country, giving his leadership style both support and criticism from within Saudi Arabia and the international community. Having said that, let's go over these human rights issues. Now let's talk about the human rights abuse. The Saudi government has been accused of human rights abuse, like imprisoning political opponents, suppressing dissent, and using torture as punishment. Some have raised concerns about how the Saudi government will treat foreign players in Saudi Arabia. Torture as punishment. Courts in Saudi Arabia are sentencing people over the most minor offenses to be punished by torture, and they're often sentenced through extremely unfair trials. There have been many reports by human rights activists and organizations about the use of torture as a punishment in Saudi Arabia's legal system. As a result, in the past 2 years, the human rights defenders Mikli bin Daham al-Shamari and Omar al-Said were sentenced to 200 and 300 lashes. While the Saudi government denies this and reassures that torture is prohibited, there's evidence that says otherwise. They have detained political dissidents, activists, and individuals by accusing them of criminal activities. These detainees have come out with claims that they were tortured during interrogation. The torture would normally include beating, electric shocks, stress positions, and prolonged solitary confinement. Some of these detainees were forced to sign confessions by threatening them either for their lives or the safety of their families, and then used these confessions against them in court. These confessions are mainly taken from the people through torture or other ways. To make matters worse, some of the detainees are even denied access to legal representation during interrogations, making them more vulnerable to abuse and torture. Secret detention centers. Secret detention centers are facilities where the accused is held in custody without letting anyone on the outside find out, like families or any legal representatives. They usually operate these facilities outside of prisons, where they can be well hidden, so the detainees are denied any kind of legal representation. There have been many reports from human rights organizations that such facilities exist, and the detainees there are exposed to severe torture. Some of these common tortures are physical abuse, psychological torment, and inhumane living conditions. A football player might get on the bad side of the Saudi government and end up in a facility like this. Lack of free speech. Saudi Arabia has strict laws, which means there's limited freedom of expression. The government is in control of the media, which means journalists and activists risk some serious consequences for criticizing the government or expressing their controversial views. This can be challenging for international players who may want to speak out on social or political issues while in the country. Saudi Arabia has a long history of not allowing protests and demonstrations. Since the government keeps an eye on public expressions of opposition or criticism, any form of protest, whether peaceful or otherwise, is strictly not allowed. These protesters usually risk facing arrest or prison. The government justifies this by saying this is needed to maintain stability and security within the country, while the activists argue that it suppresses basic human rights, like the freedom to express. Lack of women's rights. Women in Saudi Arabia face a lot of difficulties, mostly because of its laws. Women in Saudi Arabia are obligated to ask for permission from a male guardian like a father or husband before they can carry out different activities like travel, work, and education. This can make it a challenge for women to pursue a football career. Then, until recently, women were banned from participating in sports activities, and there are some changes in law where women are now allowed to attend these events with their families instead of having to sit away from their families. The ability to take part in any sport as athletes is still limited, and the Women's Football League is yet to be established, since compared to men's football, women's football in Saudi Arabia has received less investment in infrastructure, coaching, and support. For international players, this can be an issue. When their female family members would want to come and attend the game, they might face restrictions and limitations on their freedom. What do you think about football in Saudi Arabia? Let us know in the comment section below. If you enjoyed today's video, then make sure to leave a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel and click the bell icon to always be updated with the most exciting content as soon as it's uploaded. Thanks for watching. See you again soon in another video.